wanted to share how I made the Amaya and Gren costumes. General Amaya and Commander Gren are from the Dragon Prince, like the rest of the costumes I've been doing, aside from the Scarlet Witch costume I did. My sister-in-law, Samantha, is going to be dressing as General Amaya. You might recognize her from the Katara costume last year. And her brother Jordan, my brother-in-law Jordan, is dressing as Commander Gren, and he was Sokka in my Sokka video last year. The first thing I did when I knew I was going to be making these costumes, aside from panicking about how complicated they might be, was I made a miniature mock-up. And to do that, I took my little art figurine. I used a cereal box to cut the armor pieces out of. After that, I was able to take those same pieces, flatten them back out, and I traced them onto graph paper. So I used wrapping paper, and since wrapping paper has that grid on the back, I was able to use the proportions from the small graphing paper for the large graphing paper. It wasn't exactly 1-to-1. I did have to take into account the actual size of the people that this armor is going on. But it definitely helped to have that graph there and to have made the shapes in miniature before. The other good thing is when a shape didn't work, I figured that out with the cereal box cardboard instead of with the expensive cosplay foam. So I set those aside for a bit, and the next thing I did was I took this blue fabric and I chose this blue. It's got an interesting texture to it. I found it at Finders Keepers, and I decided to use this because it was inexpensive. I had enough of it, and even though it's a lighter blue than is used in the cartoon, I think it has a really pretty sheen to it. I really love the texture on it, and I think it works. I did match the blue on the shoulder pauldron to this. So to make my fabric pieces, I had to make a shirt, and it's kind of a wrap shirt. So I used this pattern, and then I used gold fabric paint. On the Gren costume, I used the same fronts of this shirt pattern, but then on the back, I just made a vest shape, that is a long vest shape, and I used black for the sleeves, and I just put it together so that it would all be one piece instead of 3 separate pieces: a sleeveless shirt, a vest, and a black shirt underneath. I didn't want to make that many layers, so I did combine them. I used gold fabric paint on the fabric, on the blue fabric, and I used white fabric paint on the felt vest part. I did not end up doing the white fabric paint at the top of the vest like Gren has, because I did run out of fabric paint, and frankly that barely peeks out from under his armor anyways, so I decided not to worry about it in the end. The next 2 fabric pieces are this little skirt thing that Amaya has that goes over her right leg, and the little cape that Gren has in the back. Both of those are just rectangles. For Gren's, I cut one edge at a slant, and I did that. I put an elastic band on Amaya's so that it will sit nicely on the waist. Alright, getting into the actual armor parts, there are 2 components of the armor. There's the leather parts and the foam parts. And for the leather, I went to the Army Surplus store, and they have these huge, like, crates, basket, bin, whatever you want to call it, of scrap pieces of leather, and it's pretty cheap to get it there. So I got all of my leather pieces from those scrap bins, and that's in Idaho Falls. So that's where I got the leather. And then for the foam, I went to Joann's and I got some of the kids' craft foam for the smaller pieces, just because it is cheaper than the cosplay foam armor. But there were definitely pieces in these two costumes that needed to come from larger parts, mainly being the breastplate, the collar, the little plates that go on the hips. Anyways, lots of pieces that don't fit onto those foam sheets that are in the kids section. For those, I went over to the section in Joann's where I knew that there was the cosplay foam to use, and it was sold out. And at this point, I was freaking out because I was so ready. I had the pattern pieces all cut out of the wrapping paper. I was ready to just get going with it. So I looked up online while I was in the store what other places nearby would have it, and of course I got advertisements for Michael's, and I don't go to Michael's, and I might talk about that some other time, but I hate Michael's for reasons. So I went to Hobby Lobby, and they had foam armor. I actually called ahead and I was like, do you have cosplay foam? And they're like, yeah, but it's selling out fast. Do you want us to set some aside for you? And I was like, yes, please. So I got there and it was already set aside for me. At Hobby Lobby, it comes in a roll, and at Joann's, it comes in a flat sheet. So that was kind of frustrating because then I had to flatten it out to trace the pieces. After I had all the pieces traced, my brother-in-law, Jordan, who is going to be Gren, he came over and helped me cut the pieces out, and then we spent the next day just using contact cement that I got from Home Depot to put the pieces together. And with contact cement, you want to put it on super thin and wait for it to dry before you put the pieces together. I actually did not film this part because I'm still new to it, and so I didn't feel confident doing it tutorial style. I'm just more sharing how I constructed it here. So after that, I used my heat gun that I got specifically because I knew I'd be making these costumes, and I was so excited for that excuse to get a heat gun, to curve the pieces how I needed them, and we got all the pieces shaped and put together except for anything that had leather on it. I did all of the leather was it that night or the next day? Anyways, Jordan left and I finished a few more pieces, and after that I started putting the leather on. I started painting, and to paint them I plasti dipped first and then I put paint on. For some of the smaller pieces, like the little buckles and the little square pyramid thing that's on the front and back of the pauldrons, I ended up using Mod Podge instead of plasti dip because they were just little and I was doing them at the very end. I connected all the leather. Leather also works really well with contact cement. And yeah, I got everything put together. For the little gold studs at the end of the leather strips on Amaya's costume, I used Brad Fastener. Anyways, I used Brad's. I think that's what they're called. And then for connecting those hip pieces, I ended up using snaps because I always want to make sure that when I have a cloth piece that it can be washed, which is why I use fabric paint, but that meant the foam couldn't go in there, so that snaps on and off. And then I did that for both costumes. And then for Gren's, because his head needs to fit through that front piece, I snapped on the front leather with 2 more snaps on the front. For the leg pieces, I created these tubes of foam, basically, that do fit around Sam's legs. And then I put elastic in the back, and I used contact cement for that. I did put painter's tape around while I waited for that to cure, because I didn't want it to pop open overnight while I was waiting for it to dry. And then for the bracers that go on the arms, I made leather strips, and then I used contact cement to put smaller snaps on those, so they're not the snaps that go through the foam this time and through the leather. They're the kind that you would sew on to a project, but I used contact cement for that. So yeah, that's the costumes. Gren will just wear dark pants, probably black pants with his, and Amaya will wear jeans with hers. I think jeans are fine for that look. I know she's just wearing dark blue pants, but I mean, everyone's got jeans. And then, let's see, I didn't make the sword, I didn't make a shield, and then Amaya will also need to put some blue gloves on. I didn't make blue gloves, I didn't find blue gloves, I didn't look for those, because, I mean, they're gloves. If worst comes to worst, she could use her Katara arm covers and gloves from last year. So yeah, that's how I made these costumes, and I've got one more costume to make from the Dragon Prince for my husband. That will be the Crowmaster costume, and I will be posting that very soon. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you know when I upload. And I'll see you next time. Bye! In case you were curious where Lewis went, he was all snuggly right before I was going to film, so I thought I would just let him snuggle on me while I filmed, but then, as you saw, he got kind of squirmy, so I put him in his crib and he fell asleep. So that's where he's at now. He's taking a nap. That again?
You can't. It's proprietary.
No, do it again, do it again.
No.
You said, hey, YouTube.
Hey YouTube, it's your boy Insanity Spreader's Got Moves, coming at you live with another video. Subscribe, ring the bell with NordVPN. You got that. Raid Shadow Leopard is down in the description below. Let's get to it.